All right, you are now tuned into the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Lee Velez. I'm here with Goose, Gabe, Heck, and Scott. Personal branding. In this episode, we have special guest Scott Devore. We cover topics that range from selling, promotion, the influence of social media, the marketing industry, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Bob Proctor and Seth Godin. Guys, if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. Kicking things off, Scott Devore, everyone. Scott, thank you for joining us, man.
What's up, man? Good to be back with you boys. It's been a while, man. Congrats on all the success. And you guys are what, 6-7 years strong now.
That's right.
It's amazing to see. I remember when this was just an idea, and now you got almost a decade under your belt, man. It's just amazing. Sure. Congrats to everybody.
Thank you.
So Scott, we had you on several times, but the last time we had on was around this time, actually, last year, episode 270, titled Motivated Believer, which was a fun episode. Actually, I don't know why, but I remember recording that episode specifically in my bedroom, and I think it was because there was so much ruckus going on in my house, boys and all that stuff. So, but anyway, so for the folks who do not know who you are and what you do, Scott Devore, let us know.
Yeah, man. I remember that a year ago. That was a tough episode, bro, man, because, we're talking about faith and we want to make sure we don't say anything wrong, right. Being Christians. And, man, I was doing a lot of praying going into that episode that Holy Spirit would kind of speak through me. I wouldn't say anything that was, non-scripture, non-biblical, but, just about me, I'm an entrepreneur through and through. Professionally, I own a real estate and construction company in Jacksonville, Florida. I hold multiple licenses. I'm a licensed general contractor, a licensed roofing contractor, a licensed real estate broker. The company itself performs lots of services, primarily through roofing, general contracting, construction, traditional real estate brokering, residential, commercial, and outside of that, I'm a family guy. I've been married for coming up on 19 years next year, and have a couple kids, a couple dogs, and that's a little bit about me.
I love it. So, all right, so we're going to talk a little bit about personal branding. Well, actually, the whole episode is about personal branding. But the first thing everyone's going to ask, I know someone's going to reach out to me. Why am I saying Scott Devore? So, Scott, when it comes to branding, why is it important for you that we're saying, that complete name?
Yeah, so I would say, so Free is my nickname, and it was a DJ name. I'm 43, but back in the day, in the mid 90s, early 90s, kind of when I got started as a young kid, my mom, I'm half Asian. My mom's from Vietnam, and like all good Asian families do, we were doing family karaoke. So we were, basically buying what we could from Radio Shack, doing our karaoke, and production value increased over time. So we were getting mixers and all that jazz. So I was learning how to use it, and kind of grew my interest and love of hip hop music. And I grew up 75 miles outside of DC. So I would listen to the DJs on the DC stations, just like mixing it up. I'm like, man, that's awesome. I want to do that. So with the very limited equipment I had with the mixer, I started to, any two audio sources I could get, whether it was like tape players back in the day or whatever, I started to make my own mixtapes. And so I was, a young entrepreneur back in my early teens, and started DJing. And then as I was getting older, becoming an older teen, I was just started doing house parties and things like that. And as anybody who DJs, you need a DJ name, and a lot of circumstances of me getting in trouble. And generally I look like a good kid, and I was, really, I would always use me getting off scot-free from any type of serious trouble. So that kind of became my DJ name, DJ Scot-Free. So all my close friends from back in the day, from the projects and everything that I grew up in, they all call me Free, Scott Free. I actually have like a thousand nicknames. So so I figured that was the best one to kind of use, and really because ScottDevore.com is taken. It was taken a long time ago because there's like 100 Scott Devores. Scott Free Devore was available. So that became like my handle on all my socials and stuff like that. But, if you went to my socials today as we're recording, you probably see there's not much going on. And I know we're going to talk about personal branding. And I know I hit you up, Jimmy Lee, on just kind of my thought process around it and what I've been wanting to do that I've been prolonging for over a decade now. I know we're going to deep dive into that, but yeah, so Scott Free is the nickname. I got like 1,000 of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we'll just kind of leave it at that.
All right.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. So So personal branding. So how did you first encounter the importance of personal branding, and what interested you most?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say this, man. I kind of explained it this way. I'm mid 40s, so I'm like the very end of Gen X. I was born in '79, and internet. We were like the last generation that grew up as kids with no internet. MySpace and all that came out in like the early 2000s, and I was just out of college. I jumped on it. I was a big MySpace guy. I didn't like Facebook initially. I thought, I had my allegiance to MySpace and to Tom. And I was one of those early users out of college in the early 2000s as the .com and Y2K and all that crap. I remember going through college, graduating, and I was supposed to, end the world and everything. So my generation, we jumped on, the internet, and we were the first to use social media. And, back then, we just used it to, just to connect with people from high school that, we haven't seen in years. Cause, like kids today, they're connected, on what, I don't even know what all the apps are. I got to ask my kids. So when they kind of transitioned to using social media as a business, I've kind of was already on it for like 15 plus years. So I feel like my generation, either we truly were on it or we sort of got fatigued with it. Like we were just sort of tired of it. And I didn't take advantage of it like I should have, because I was already on it for like 15 plus years. I was just connecting with friends, but I didn't like grasp what you could do with social media and transition it to marketing and branding, for my business. And probably some of that comes from, me and my wife, we're kind of private people. So, it's like, we just use social media to kind of keep up with, family and nothing more than that. But then and plus, we had kids and we wanted to kind of keep their lives a little private, which is ironic because our kids, are actors in LA when they got started. We're in Florida now. So when I became like a full-time entrepreneur 7 years ago, when I moved to Florida, I was a corporate guy up until then for about 15 years. I knew I needed to really kind of do something. And I know I was talking to you about podcasting, like even before you guys launched Rotated Views, because I just knew there was something there. I just didn't, because I had so much going on with business, launching a new company, relocating to a new state. I knew that was like the future and something I needed to do. It's just that I'm just giving a bunch of personal excuses. I knew it was what I needed to do. I just wasn't like fully on board of doing it. And just recently, as I've sort of been a student of personal branding, marketing, social media, I'm not like ignorant to it. I just haven't jumped in and did what I needed to do. Some things just kind of came together for me recently. I'm like, all right, it's like now or never. It's time to get rolling, and we can deep dive into that even more as we go along.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a very good way of explaining, because you're absolutely right. I say this all the time about YouTube. When YouTube first came out back in 2006, I believe, it was we were there for just basically entertainment value, but I never saw it truly as myself utilizing it for marketing myself. And if I did, it wasn't very deep. It was very shallow planning, if any. And then all of a sudden, it just sort of, a lot of these platforms, they come out and I think they come out for an actual single purpose, but they almost take on lives of their own, and they become something, I believe, even different than what the person who created it. Facebook, for example. Right. I mean, I don't need to retell that story, but now we literally use it to connect with dear loved ones of ours, where before, like, how it got started was something totally opposite of just that. Actually, probably the exact opposite of that. So it's interesting. So, and then when we sort of lived through it. So then you see kids or just the younger generation kind of come along and take it because it's already morphed into what you can do with it. And so when they're applying it, it's kind of like, yeah, no, duh. Like, this is what you're supposed to do with YouTube. This is what you're supposed to do with Instagram. This is what you're supposed to do with TikTok. This is what you're supposed to do with Snapchat and all the rest of them, right? Whereas we're kind of like developing even the platform. I remember when there was huge lawsuits and cases for taking someone else's image on a social media platform and using it for your own, even if you change the colors on it. And that was a thing, and now it no longer is, right? And then all of a sudden, memes blew up, and then people created business out of that. Anyway, long story short, in that you saw people develop their own brand because they stuck with a niche. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, where what's the importance of identifying yourself, whether that's, like something like the rotated views, where we're kind of, we have some level of a niche, but we're general in the guests that we have on. So everyone's from all kinds of walks of life and businesses. However, we're talking about entrepreneurship, personal development, and motivation, right? And so that's the common thread. And we identified that at launch. So I guess my question to you is that something that you develop along the way? And so you're scot-free Devore, and then you develop what that is? Or is it that you go into it intentionally with what you're, I guess, trying to launch or promote?
Yeah. So I think there's been a kind of shift in what a lot of influencers is teaching, because before it was niche and then niche down even more. And there's a guy who I just recently kind of came across. I'm going to throw some names that guys who I really follow now, like what they're teaching. So Adam Enfroy, you can go to Adam Enfroy, ENFROY.com. He's a guy who makes like $400,000 a month on his blog. And he was a account manager for a marketing company and had a large budget, tons of millions of dollars. So he kind of learned SEO and marketing and things like that. And when he's kind of like me, worked a job, but was really an entrepreneur inside, and kind of used the knowledge that he gained from his corporate experience, launch his own company. So when he launched his company, his website, he just named his website his name, AdamEnfroy.com, and he tells a story. I'm kind of, paraphrasing his story, but this is what changed everything for him. He says, if I would have made my website blog like ecommerceguy.com, he would have kind of put himself in a niche. And if he would have tried to make content outside of it, it would have confused his audience. But because he made himself AdamEnfroy.com, he has lots of free material on YouTube, and he actually has a few courses that are phenomenal. He's like, you can unlimited pivot, right? So maybe e-commerce was his thing, but now he talks about everything else. And so he's basically built himself, like the thought process is you develop yourself as an influencer or an expert in whatever the field is. So you personal brand yourself, but then as you build your personal brand, that personal brand then points back to your different businesses and your services. So that's kind of the concept. So there's another guy who I've been following for a long time, Ryan Pineda, Pineda. He's similar to me, as in he's like half Asian. He's like 10 years younger than me. He's close to y'all's age. But this dude, he kind of like a private guy. he was on like just social media to keep up with friends, and he's a real estate investor based out of Las Vegas. Uh, he started joining these masterminds, and these masterminds are like, dude, if you went on social media and started promoting yourself, you would just like kill it. You would blow up. And he just gave it. He's like, fine, I'll do it. So he got on YouTube, started making content. So I caught wind of him about 9 months into his journey of making content. And now fast forward a year and a half later, just how much I've seen this guy grow in his business from the year and a half after now it's like 2.5 years, 2.5, 3 years he's been making, regular YouTube content. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's just like absolutely grown where he was making like $1 million a year. Now this guy makes over $1 million a month, all because he built his influence, personal branded himself. And then because of that, he draws everything back that he talks about, back to his businesses, his real estate investing company. He has like a CPA company. He now does, a lot of the stuff we're talking about personal branding. He now teaches that to, entrepreneurs who want to build their own influence online. He has a business now that teaches that. And so the last person I'm going to mention is Gary Vaynerchuk, who everybody knows. Gary Vaynerchuk's the OG, like the greatest of all time when it comes to digital marketing and promotion. And when the thing finally clicked for me in my head was, all right, Gary Vaynerchuk, he'll say something like, you got to post, 30 times a day across all of your different platforms. So like whether it's your LinkedIn profile, your YouTube, your Instagram, your TikTok or whatever, just a few times each on one of those. Now you're like 20, 30 times a day. And the reason why you do that is because you're making content, and if you're not making content, nobody knows who you are, right? So I do these wonderful things, and I'll just kind of give you like a firsthand account. Like when I do a lot of in-person networking, and I don't like over the years I've done very little to promote myself, so on the different social media stuff. But every time I go somewhere, because of my diverse background and my being a real estate guy and a general contractor, I go in these network meetings, like if it's a new one I've never been to, and I introduce myself and I tell people like what I do. Everyone's just like, oh my goodness, like that's like so amazing, like that you do all that, because my background is it's not the only person. I'm not the only person who has like the different licenses I have, or whatever, but I get like extremely good feedback, and I usually like leave these meetings getting a ton of referrals for business. And I'm like, man, if I do that, if I actually transfer that to, like what Ryan Pineda has done and got, finally, if you watch Think Media, they're like, just turn the camera on and start recording. Well, I just never have done that. And I'll kind of explain, what I thought is like probably the biggest barrier to that, and why and how that actually relates to personal branding. But I'm like, if I just start making this content, like following like what these guys do, I just know it would be a game changer for me. And again, I'm not thinking I'm gonna just go viral if I start making videos, but it's one of those things where Gary Vaynerchuk will say, what do you have to lose? You start making content, and say you don't blow up, but now you're building a catalog, like kind of what you guys do with the podcast. I mean, you guys have built this catalog of years and years and years. And I know you guys have been ranked Apple, one of the top podcasts on Apple, over time, and other types of rankings, which is phenomenal. But you guys are building this cache of content that, if you guys want to expand into other things, you kind of point back to, your catalog, you have it there, almost a decade worth of stuff. So the kind of the same mindset when it comes to, when you're out there, finally, a lot of people don't get started because of, imposter syndrome. So when I kind of looked at everything, I'm like, all right, one of the things that I felt like held me back was, everyone says you have the niche. Like that's what everyone was saying up until like recently, where things have kind of pivot. Everyone's like, you got a niche. I'm like, well, just my company itself, we're not just like a roofing company. Like we do roofing, we do development, we do real estate, we do business consulting, we do government contracting. And I'm like, man, that's just like, it's like a dozen services just there. Like the company itself does a niche. And so one of the things I felt like held me back from making content was I wasn't sure if I needed to make content about the business and the services. Uh, and okay, well, what service did I start out first? Do I make a YouTube page for each one of my services? Like my company's called Devore Capital Contracting Consulting Incorporated. Do I make a YouTube page for Devore Capital Roofing? Do I make a YouTube page for Devore Capital Real Estate? I'm like, I like feel like that's so overwhelming. So when the personal branding finally stuck in, is you brand yourself first. So I'm brand Scott Devore. You base everything off of that as the primary. So when I began again, so I'm not saying, I'm not speaking as an expert. I'm speaking as a student who is going to who's finally, ready to start doing this thing. So hopefully we can use this as a year from now. We can look at the end of 2023. Did this Scott Free Devore to really do what he said he's going to do? But um, the the last thing I'll say before I'll let you jump back in is um, I felt like the thing that held me back was I thought everything had to be talking about the business itself, like leading. And now when I've kind of flipped to personal brand first, that kind of changed it, where it kind of took the pressure off. And then the last great thing I've heard when it comes to all this is what Gary Vaynerchuk says. Um, Gary Vaynerchuk says a lot of people, they really kind of don't get started because of the imposter syndrome, but the imposter syndrome where they feel like maybe I'm not the expert. So who am I to make videos about real estate investing when I only been doing it for not that long? Or who am I to make videos about whatever the topic is? And so Gary Vaynerchuk kind of flips it. He's like, don't make videos as the expert, document the journey, right? So if you're documenting the journey, it takes that phrase itself, and I probably didn't give it the build up that I was trying to. It just takes the pressure off of everything. I'm not anybody who's like me, ready to get started and start truly making content. If you document your journey, you're just doing it, and then you can inspire people, and plus maybe your journey is 6 months ahead of someone else, so maybe you are the expert to them. But that kind of those phraseologies that Vaynerchuk, Gary Vee would say, just that with a lot of other things, like kind of in my brain made it all come together for me. So and the last thing I'll say is this. I am a lot of that advice really applies more so to people who are young and new, right? So like say like a 18, 19-year-old who just graduated high school or whatever, and they haven't really done a whole lot with themselves, and but they feel like they can utilize social media or whatever to build their brand, build their awareness, and then for whatever business that they're trying to get in, help them. But I take it for someone like me, man, I am experienced. Like I've been a professional for 20 plus years. I graduated college in 2001 with my bachelor. I got 3 business degrees. I got all these licenses that I said at the beginning. I've done real estate investing for a long time. Almost 20 years I've been in real estate, buying properties. I've consulted entrepreneurs. I've done billions of dollars of management as a corporate professional person. All these things. So like, and I'm just speaking to me. I'm like, man, I look at myself, like I have so much content and so much experience, and none of it is really in one thing. So the last person I'll mention is a guy named Dan Koe, Koe, where he's a guy who talks about like a one person business, and it's about personal branding. So his biggest thing is the opposite of niching, where he talks about being a generalist, where if you're niching in a certain thing, and again with the Adam and for it doesn't allow you to be able to pivot. But as a generalist, you know someone like myself who's been experienced in a lot of different areas, if I had a niche type of website or handle and not my own personal name, personal brand, it would have limited me from to being able to speak about the things that I am a generalist in. But it's almost like a generalist, but also specialized in, different areas. Like I'm not gonna, obviously talk about things I have know nothing about, but just anything for me, it's like construction, real estate, investing, entrepreneurship, related is the stuff. And the other thing I would say when it comes to personal branding, a lot of what actually helps you build your audience is, when you talk your on brand stuff. So your on brand is like your business stuff you do, but when you talk off brand, so your off brand is like your person, like your personal life, and that's really what um, makes you relatable to people. So like Ryan Pineda, for example, he's an ex baseball player. He was in the minors trying to make it to the big leagues for like so many years. But he tells that story a lot. A lot of people who follow him, know that about him. But if he only talked about real estate flipping and all that stuff, and never his off-brand stuff like his baseball stuff or his family, or he shares that he's a man of faith as well. Those are the things that tie you to somebody at another level that's more than just business, whether it's just some dude who's just coming off talking about whatever. Even like Gary Vaynerchuk, he wants to buy the Jets, he's into baseball cards and yard sales and all that stuff, because he talks about that was the stuff he did as a kid, with his to make money. But
yeah, no, absolutely. So as you're talking, it made me think of so if someone's listening out there, this is the personal branding. Just think of it, and you're not in quote business, and you're not trying to start a handle or anything like that, or be an influencer. Just think of it this way. So because I want to I want to round it all back to this is applicable to everybody, regardless of what you're doing. And we all heard this a very long time ago, whether it was in a book, whether it was in business, whatever. How you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And obviously, we grow, we change, we modify. However, if you have a reputation, so think about your reputation. What is it? And you may or may not want to ask around. Just think about it, and let's just think very general. Are you known as a very lazy person? Are you known as a person that's not very accountable and doesn't follow up with things when you say you're going to do something? Are you known as always winning, or at least winning the majority of the time? Are you known as a hard worker or always producing quality work? That's your personal brand, right? This separate this from a business. You are a business. Everyone on here is a business. You're always selling yourself, and in a sense where you're building your reputation, right? And you're selling who you are is what I'm trying to say here. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So if you kind of what you're saying is it's more like your inherent like traits, right? So those are things that I feel like I can't think of the right what the right word is, but when you're putting yourself out there, let's say you're not even on on camera, you're just out there, there's I did this workshop, and actually I was thinking about it because I was listening, just from something you said on one of your recent episodes. I went to this workshop. It was called Executive Presence, right? And you were talking about how like when you go to work, it's more than you just wearing a suit, or I forget how you said it. I was just on a recent episode. And so like if your thing is, all right, I want to be, I'm someone who strives for success or whatever. I want to, if it is, it's if it is like you just want to, grow in your corporate career and all that, it's like the same thing, dude. It's like how you you turn on, right? So if you're the guy who just kind of shows up and just waves, goes to your desk and just works all day and you don't talk to anybody. It's completely different if you're the guy who like says hello to the receptionist, you're going around talking to the customers, you're calling up your supervisor or even like the president of the company, and that's like your how you carry yourself. That's your brand. And so executive presence, like this workshop I just recently took at one of the local universities, those people who have like a high degree of executive presence, those are the guys who climb up, to the higher levels of the company. So it's how you carry yourself, right? So it's kind of the same thing, just like as we're turning on, the social media posts or the videos to make this content. You're just kind of applying that, but you're opening that whole to the whole entire universe, and putting it out there.
Yeah, you're amplifying it too, right? So when you put yourself out there on social media, specifically, you're amplifying it because you have way more eyeballs staring at you than just at your workplace, right? And so, and obviously, this is the decision. So you now decide, okay, I want to brand myself in a particular way. These are the things that interest me, and I am going to share my journey, right? So there's a person out there listening saying, hey, I too am a believer. I too work hard and am looking into further my investment portfolio in real estate or cryptocurrency or other things like that. I want to start sharing, I guess, my road to success, so to speak. Where does one go from there? So we understand that, right? I want to put content out. I want to amplify my personal brand and who I am by putting it on social media or having my own website, and sharing my my experience. Where does one go from there?
Well, I mean, it's actually it's a very individual thing.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to figure out where you want to start. So I'll just take me.
Okay.
I remember talking to you, man, back in when I left. I used to live in LA. I was a CFO for a division of a healthcare company, 300 million P&L that I was in charge of, and had a pretty good corporate thing going on, but just being the entrepreneur I finally felt like it was time. I felt the calling. Like, all right, I'm in my mid 30s. Am I gonna do this as something I feel like I've been led to do, or am I just gonna just rot in corporate hell? No offense to the corporate people. Again, I just say that for me personally. That's how I felt. Like, it was a great company. It's a Fortune 100, but I was like, outside of like getting to the decision point, I knew that I knew it was important for me to document what I was doing, even though I didn't do anything with it at the time, but I was really heavily journaling back then.
Yeah.
So part of what I want to do is, and I was thinking about doing this a lot as my launch point was, okay, I didn't do anything when I made the decision because maybe to be honest, I wasn't sure if I was going to succeed. I thought, man, when I made that decision, I quit my full-time job. I moved out of LA to a new state across country in Florida, on the other side of the country to Florida. So I was unemployed intentionally, moved from LA to Jacksonville, Florida, launched this business that started out as me just consulting. I was a freelance finance and operations consultant. Picked up one customer that I found through, just like networking and stuff. Came out here with one customer, bought a house, did this huge change, and I was like journaling like everything, just keeping it private because I wasn't ready to put out there because I thought, man, if I start making this content now and I fail, it's not gonna be a good look, or I'm gonna have to delete it all. So then I thought, all right, my 1 year anniversary is coming up. Maybe, I remember the day, July 10th was my final day as a corporate person. That was the day I just, I was my last day when I gave my notice. I'm going into business for myself. So July 15, 2015 is when I made that life-changing move. So July 10th, 2016, I'm like, all right, as the time's leading up, I was like, all right, am I gonna, maybe I'll do a launch a year later. Well, I didn't do a launch then. like next year, maybe I can launch with my 2 years since I made a decision to do that. 3, 4, 5, 6. That was 7 years later, right? I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna launch with this. I got this content. I could talk about this journey of basically going from, corporate executive to corporate dropout to, freelance consultant entrepreneur to now building a multi-million-dollar company. So I have all this, I got this cache of thoughts that will become content one day that I'm going to roll out. So for me, so it's a very specific thing to the individual is what I'm saying. And I'll leave it at that.
I like that because it's been a track of my own in terms of sticking with what I know and tracking my progress. So me and Gabe, we talk about this all the time. I always say it takes one. It's going to take one thing for us to completely blow up in a positive way, because we have so much material, right? For the podcast alone, we have 4 years. I mean, sorry, almost 7 years, 6.5 years of material, 300 plus episodes, once a week. We have the 2 mixtapes or audio tapes that are still out and applicable. A book basically in the hopper. The Blessed Lifestyle brand, a little over 4 years, and all this stuff, and we just keep adding. It was like, boom, once something hits, we have, like as you said earlier, we have all this material,
right,
this treasure chest of information, basically, of documenting our entire career as being online, and sharing our sort of road to success. And as we've moved, and I was a huge there's so many episodes on the Rotated Views that talk about this earlier on, because early on we didn't have guests, so early on we had a lot of topic talking, right? And so we always talked about just get started, just do something, record it, hit record. Even if, Scott, to your point about journaling, even if I didn't post it, just get something going, because you're gonna have to recalibrate anywhere. You might as well recalibrate your own product instead of recalibrating your mind, and then you have, whatever they call it, like, the thought constipation, where you just keep thinking and rethinking of stuff and drawing blanks, but you never really did anything. Whereas we kind of massaged the product and just made it to our own. And that's, for us, it's truly a lifestyle. Like, this is this is who we are. And so I love that about our journey. So it's fascinating to hear you have something similar, and some of it might be unreleased, because we also have some things that are unreleased. When does one come out with like the whole treasure chest, or don't you? You just always have something in reserve?
Yeah, well, you're just, as I've been really kind of building up to getting started, like my plan is January 2023 is to release, like, as I study the what other people who actually teach, like if you start a YouTube channel or whatever, you want to have like five videos in the bag. So then if you just have one and people like it, but you have nothing else, you might lose that potential subscriber forever if they have nothing else for them to watch. But so the thing is, like, it's a journey, right? It's just when you document the journey, as I said, quoting Gary Vaynerchuk, your journey is your life, right? So the thing is, like, as I was talking with you, I was like earlier when I was getting all excited about it, because it's you and not like a product, or like Jimmy Lee, you do all these things that you mentioned, Blessed, the motivation files, Rotated Views, like all these other things, right? But those are things that Jimmy Lee points to, right? You're pointing to all these things as you personal brand yourself. And because it's you, it never gets old. You will never run out of things to say, unless you don't think you're someone who has anything important to say, or or whatever, is a dense person. But, people like, entrepreneurs like us, dude, we just, the things that we might be doing 5 years from now, it might, we might be talking about, NFTs, even though that's already out now, but whatever. But it's you, right? So if you lead with you, that's when, like Adam Enfoy says, you can always pivot, right? You didn't niche into this thing where you're stuck in it, and then if you rebrand it, it's going to confuse people. So that's why it's important to personal brand, you. But some people are specialists. Some people only want to be known as that one thing, and that's phenomenal. That's great for that person to do that. But there's been this tide shift to, instead of specialist to generalist, instead of niching to more broad, because it's more stuff to talk about. And that kind of relates to the on-brand, off-brand stuff I was saying. Like, I'm half Vietnamese, man. I could talk about pho. I could talk about, egg rolls. I could talk about, I used to play ball, college basketball. I could talk about DJing. I could talk about boxing. I could talk about whatever, right? And those things are like, if my website was real estate construction general contractor.com, and this dude's now talking about playing ball against Steve Francis, like,
wow,
people would be like, I don't even that doesn't even make any sense to me. So that's why I think it's important to, that's why this whole personal brand thing, and as more people have been talking about it, again, it's not like a new thing, but more people are talking about it, for creators more so than ever. Like I said, that there's been a shift in the tide from niching to kind of more generalized personal brand yourself. And that's, I think that's where we are in 2022 going to 2023 for new influencers, because there's always space, right? It's abundance. Like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that. There's so much abundance out there in this space, right? And then, especially if you're talking about topics that, there's like, the algorithms, like the topics of real estate investing and development and all that. I mean, those are, people are always looking for that type of data. And, those are like the areas that I operate in. Again, I don't think I'm not expecting to just like blow up and go viral and like get 100,000 subscribers in a week, but I know there's room for me because there's room for everybody. The internet, it's the world, right? How many people are on, I think I don't even forget how many creators are out there. But, and I do know that, there's a lot of talk about how there's room for the new people, because the algorithms are trying to promote smaller channels instead of just the people who are like, Mr. Beast, who has 100 million, 100 billion subscribers or whatever he's at. There's always room for the new content creators. And just like anything, like any business, right? You always hear people say, oh, it's too, if I would have got in 10 years ago, well, that's just an excuse, right? Yeah, I wish I would have got in 10 years ago. Well, here, the funny thing is, I actually made a YouTube video back in 2008. I don't even know if it's even out there, but it was just like a kind of a spy type of thing. Imagine if I would have just continued on with that, with that channel I created, where I would be. But I don't know if I want really people to find it and watch it, but I'm not sure where I was going with that. But it's a good one. I'll have to find it and send it to you.
I would have to agree. We our podcast has I think we've lasted as long as we have and been out here thus far because of, well, there's a couple things. Obviously, there's a little bit of, or a lot of motivation on our end, a lot of tenacity, and obviously we have some grit, right? Because to do anything for 6.5, almost 7 years, that's not a simple decision to make. And all of us have, are married with kids and have our own thing going, right? And careers, separate careers. So the point is that we saw things, other channels or brands or anything start, but I feel like some things were got caught up in the subject matter to your point as being a generalist. They ran out of material and the thing was over, whatever. But when you have it as, like to your point, Mr. Beast, that doesn't describe anything really. But once you go to it, he does various things. So it's kind of fascinating to see him develop and and manifest into the version that he is now. But once you have the material, talk a little bit about marketing yourself and possibly self promotion, and how do you become seen? Is it a natural thing and you just wait to quote go viral, or are you purposely strategically self promoting and marketing yourself?
So here's kind of getting into a deeper level to answer your question. So you got to look at, well, let me make this statement first and then I'll dive into it. So when someone's interested in a topic, they're gonna go to Google and type in the search bar to find an article or a blog post or whatever, or for whatever that is. Or so that's a that's written word, or they want to watch it because they don't have time to read. Right. So those are a a visual thing. People want to watch a video or they want to read it. Right. So I'm looking at this, and this is how Ryan Pineda kind of he specializes in a video, and this Adam Enfroy specializes in kind of writing articles and things like that, where each article or each video, you got to look at it like it's its own business. Like it's intentional. So it's its own business. So it has a purpose. So when you hit it from, so I'm looking at it where things kind of really made sense to me very recently in the past month was hitting it from both sides, from videos to your website. And Adam Enfroy talks about, like, when he writes a blog post, he's either writing blogs that are instructional, how-to blogs, or about a product. So people are either looking for information, instruction, or they're looking for like a product, right? So the content that's created has a purpose. So the purpose is to get eyeballs, and from that, you want to either, so basically the purpose could be you're pointing it to, like, so for me, say I'm writing or I'm doing a video on how to get your real estate license. Right. So that's an instructional video. Okay. You have to go through a 68 3-hour class in Florida. You have to, apply with the state to do the tests and everything. And then I could say, these are some of the top schools in Florida where you can take the course. Well, as an entrepreneur, that has value because I'm pointing to different companies that actually sell a course to get your real estate license in Florida. And so the strategy would be then to become an affiliate of those companies, because a lot of it is software, and then they all have affiliate programs. So I'm making content about real estate. So now I'm becoming this authority in the space on real estate. I then make content about how to get your real estate license. And then I have content of, hey, these are the best real estate schools to go to in the state of Florida to get your license. So you're creating this, intentional flow of information that's leading the audience, your customers, to, watching your videos, number one, and then going to something that has a product that you could be indirectly selling it as an affiliate. And so that goes from like videos to the same thing. It works exactly the same way when it comes to written word, like if it's a blog. So, you look at it as a business, right? So like Adam Enfroy, he talks about, hey, this is blogging like 2.0. This isn't blogging like from the early 2000s where, you and I, we used to do the celebrity entrepreneur blog, right? We were just writing about something that we were passionate about, entrepreneurship, celebrities. We thought, hey, this is a catchy thing. But we didn't, we didn't know we weren't monetizing it like what Adam Enfroy kind of teaches it, to today. So the basically every piece of content you put out there has a purpose of, it's like its own standalone business, for that, again, you're trying to get eyeballs, and then you're pointing people to something that, for me, I could if I like a lot of people who are hands-off investors, I talk about being a developer in Northeast Florida, where it's one of the hottest real estate markets in the nation. And we're doing ground up, building multifamily. And when I start making content around that, Grant Cardone, right? Grant Cardone or whatever, you know, this guy he does billions of dollars a year of getting, investors to invest in his projects.
Yeah.
Because he makes the content and like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's getting returns, for all of his investors every year in and year out. So for me, same concept. I'm start making, talking about the projects I'm doing for myself as a developer. Then I talk about future developments, looking for investors. I'm the authority in the space because I finally put myself out there. People know about us. Then now you're creating leads for for yourself, for the services and products that you're selling.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's switch gears just a tad bit. Do you feel that at all times we're selling ourselves, right? And so who we are. And so this is something my mom was huge on growing up. Goose and Heck, I mean, you guys could jump in whenever you want, but she would not allow us to leave the house looking like a hot mess. There was no pajamas, there was no, gym shorts, like not even that, unless we were going to gym class or playing basketball, or like, out back or something like that. When we went outside of the house, we had to be dressed and ironed. Like our clothes had to be ironed and everything because it was a representation of who we were. So in saying that, is that something that uh, when we're putting out quality or when we're putting out content, we should also be mindful of that, right? So if you're putting out garbage quality or garbage content, I guess temporarily, to the point we were making earlier, it's okay because you're actually doing something, maybe not necessarily publishing it, right? But modifying it and then growing from there. So do you feel that we're always selling ourselves to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, at any time you come across another human being, they're probably judging, if that's, I can't think of a better word, in some way, right?
Yeah.
So it just really depends, because people will say, like, if Alex Hormozzi, right? This dude is, he only works with clients who have like $100 million companies or $2 million companies who wants to sell. And he makes just very simple videos. And he'll teach, well, you don't need to be all flashy with the production value. But then you take Ryan Pineda, he just invested $100,000 in building a studio in his office. It just really comes down to the person. Really, if the content is good, that's great. But
Yeah.
human beings do want to be visually, audibly, satisfied. So right. I'm taking the approach, well, it's easy to get some production value for it doesn't take a lot of effort or investment to do. So like, and like when I generally, we're just hanging as homies, so I just put my Jeremy Lin shirt on and my Jeep hat. But like when I'm out and about, like I wear my Devore Capital work shirt, right? Because it's my company, it's my brand. I don't wear anything else other than my company shirt when I go, unless I go to a meeting. I wear like a collar shirt or whatever. So yeah, dude. I mean, but it's how you want to carry yourself, right? You look like Gary Vaynerchuk. That dude's just V-necks and whatever. But he's earned that. He's multi-millionaire many times over. So it just really, you got to own however you want to brand yourself, however, and then that's your thing, right? It's really just how confident you are, however you decide to go about yourself.
What is the number one obstacle with personal branding?
Just starting. Is imposter syndrome number one? I mean, that is a number one. And then just doing it, right? It's just, all right, making content. Finally just saying it's just time to go. There's no excuses. You're going to get left behind, right? Gary Vaynerchuk will say this. You can take a company that has no social media presence, but they've been in the area for 30 years. Say it's a appliance repair company, 30 years strong, right? They're profitable. And you could take a brand new guy who no experience at all, but he starts making content about fixing refrigerators and washer and dryers and fax machines or whatever. And he starts making content, he will immediately outpace that 30-year-old established business just because he's making content. Business is done different now. And this is kind of one of the things I was thinking about, like, for me at least, I'm kind of, I feel like my generation, myself in my, I'm in mid 40s, I'll be 44 next February. I feel like I'm like in that bridge, right? 20 years ahead of me is the baby boomers. Those dudes are brick and mortar 100% through and through. But then the 20-year younger, like younger than me, those are the young cats out of college, haven't done anything. They want to make money the easy way and not work hard like us. So I'm like that in the middle, right? I talked about early on how the internet wasn't a thing when I was a kid, and then it became a thing at the end of high school and going into college. And the difference maker of 2022 to going to 2023 is those who are making content are the ones who are going to win, and everyone else is going to eventually die. So you gotta get with the program. You gotta start. You gotta make your content, and when you have actual a couple decades worth of experience, like someone like me, I mean, you just have so much more authority than someone who doesn't have any experience at all who's getting started. But that person, like if I never make content, but that young dude who's like 19 years old and he wants to be a real estate investor and he just starts making content, he finally does a flip, he will run laps around me like forever because he's actually doing it and he's making himself known, to the world, because he knows that that's what you just have to do to be successful in today's business climate.
I love it. All right, Scott Free Devore, everyone. Before we close out, is there anything that, any topic we didn't touch upon that you wanted to touch upon, or any message that you have for the listeners? And then once we get through that, how can folks get in touch with you? And what are some of the things we should look forward to 2023 from you?
Yeah, man. I think we hit them all up, man. Like I said, I hope that I can point to this episode in a year from now, and then anyone else who listens to this, you could see if I actually, did what I said and started personally branding myself and making content, or if I didn't, if I was just a poser again, because it's been 10 years I've been knowing the need to do this, and it's just time to get started. And I know I'm excited about what you and I are going to be working on next week, coming down here to for a couple of days for us to shoot, hopefully hours and hours worth of content, just part of that cache of videos that I'm going to be releasing, coming the beginning of next year. So you can reach me. So my handle is Scott Free Devore, SCOTTFREEDEVORE. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are like my two main, social media platforms. Soon to be, I had the handle for my YouTube. There's no videos out there yet. I couldn't even find the channel if you search for it. But for like my business, like my real business stuff, where I gotta, be the straight, CEO of the company. The company website is devorecapital.com. Like I said, we are a real estate and construction development company. You can see all the services that we offer. We're headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida. So you can find my website and my phone number there if you have true real estate or construction projects you want to chat about. Love to chat about those. And yeah, that's it. That's how you find me.
I love it, man. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We like to wrap things up with quotes, and the first one is by Bob Proctor. Don't be a victim of negative self-talk. Remember, you are listening. And the second one by Seth Godin. Our job is to connect to people, interact with them in a way that leaves them better than we found them, more able to get where they'd like to go. personal branding. In this episode, we have special guest Scott Free Devore. The crew covers topics that range from selling, promotion, the influence of social media, the marketing industry, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Bob Proctor and Seth Godin.
Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyLeeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyLeeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.